Hey guys, welcome to the RAMZPAUL show. It is Thursday, January 30th. It's great to be here with you guys. As you see, I'm doing my daily shows again. Tomorrow night, Friday night, will be my evening show. So the RAMZPAUL show on Friday is going to be in the evening. So I'm kind of developing my schedule. It's good to be here with you guys today. There's a lot of stuff to cover. It's been a rainy day, raining. The rains are moving in Arkansas now. Spring's a rainy time. And it's starting to warm up. It was in the 50s. It feels pretty good. It's great to see all you guys. And we got a lot of stuff to go over. And last night, I missed a power chat from Lewis Barrow. So, Lewis, if you're watching, thank you. He said that she needs a semi-truck or bus to haul her around. In her defense, there are metabolic issues that can make you obese. That was this big fat rapper in Detroit. That Lyft. She called a Lyft to transport her somewhere because she's too fat to fit in a car. And the guy goes, "I can't even get you in here." She literally weighs 500 pounds. 500 pounds. That's just like, it's just physics. It just won't work. And so she's suing. And it is pretty disgusting. But thank you for that. And about the metabolic thing, maybe, but you don't never see a metabolic issues when people don't eat. They tend to be thin, right? So if you're in Africa starving, you're still not obese with them, if you're not eating a lot of food. A lot of these people with so-called metabolic issues, they're just eating too many calories. It's kind of a simple formula. Being overweight is almost always due to overeating. Exercise helps a little bit, but not as much as people may think. It's mostly eating. And a lot of these people, if you look at their diet, they're eating all the time. So, and again, the metabolism may have a little bit to do with it, but I'm a little bit skeptical. Anyway, guys, thank you for being here at the RAMZPAUL show. I do this every day, Monday through Friday. At 11 a.m. Central, and except for Friday. At Friday, it's 8 p.m. I have my evening show. And thank you a whole lot. Last night I had Happy Homelands, and it was a fun show. And on Tuesday night, we had a roundtable. And that's for people that subscribe to me on Substack. And Substack, I do a couple of things. Every Friday, I do a members-only either video or article. But Monday through Thursday, I typically do an article that's for free for everyone. So there's no reason not to subscribe to me, even if you don't want to pay. I encourage you to pay. It helps support me and you get more additional content. But you might as well go ahead and sign up. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat so you guys can see my Substack. At the end of the month, I'm not going to support Gumroad anymore. Gumroad was my platform. After I was off Patreon, I went to Gumroad and Group App. And Group App, there weren't many people on. Most of the people were on Gumroad. But Gumroad started to have a lot of technical issues with the email. It just wasn't ready for prime time. So I migrated to Substack, which is a huge platform. It works really well. I'm really impressed with it. So check me on there. Oh, another thing, if you guys saw, there was a video posted. It's happened a couple of times on my YouTube account of a video that wasn't me. Someone else is loading a video to my account. And it's a real mystery. I think I figured it out. I changed my passwords and I changed my permissions. Only people that can load in my channel should be me. But this guy was still doing it. And this guy, I don't think he's doing it maliciously. He's just I think he's in Britain. He's a song composer for video games or something like that. So it's not like he's doing anything malicious. Something just got really messed up. And I think what happened, he has a Substack, and you have an option when you load a video on Substack, it can automatically load that video to YouTube. Somehow, when he loads his video to Substack, it loads it also to my YouTube channel. I don't know how that happened, but I disconnected the ability for Substack to load it to my YouTube channel. I hope that creates the issue. I wrote the guy, I told him what was happening. He hasn't responded. Again, I don't think it was malicious, but if you're wondering what has happened, that's the reason. It shouldn't happen. And YouTube, there's like no way to contact YouTube for help. unless you're a real big content producer, you don't have a contact. So I'm not really sure what's happening. Again, I changed my passwords. I double check my permissions, because on YouTube, what you can do, you can, if you're like a big brand, let's say you're Tim Pool, you can designate other people that can load videos to your channel. And that way you don't have to give them your password to your personal account. They can load, you could do a video and you have your little lackeys load it via their account to your channel. But in my case, I'm the only guy, so I'm not sure what's happening. So I hope this fixed it. I severed the link between Substack and YouTube. Hopefully that fixed it. But again, I don't think the guy was a hacker or anything. I think it was just some weird screw up. So really strange though. And it's not like my password is easy to guess. It's uppercase, lowercase, special characters, and I've changed it. So I really don't know. But hopefully that will stop, and it worries me a lot. All right, let's see here. We got a lot of stuff. Oh, if you want to support the show or ask questions, I really appreciate it. YouTube has Super Chats, speaking of YouTube. Rumble has rants. I appreciate that. Powerchats are below. You can send Powerchats during the show or after the show. So if you're watching the show later in the evening when I'm not live, if you have a question or a comment, you want to help support the show, I really do appreciate it. And Stream Elements is a similar feature. It has links, and I appreciate everything I get on that. So thank you very much on that. All right, I think we'll get into the news now. And I spoke about this, I wrote about this today on my Substack. It was a terrible accident last night happened in Washington, D.C. And what this was, you guys probably heard, a military helicopter, I think it was an Apache, looks like it ran into a American Airlines passenger jet. And you could kind of see it here. This is a plane right here in view. And then, let's see here. Here's a helicopter way over here, right? There's little lights there. And the plane was coming in from Wichita, Kansas to Washington. And a lot of the people on the plane, sadly, were part of the United States ice skating team, figure skating team. And that's really sad. It looks like everyone died. So you can see this plane, the American Airlines, is coming in for a landing. And the Apache helicopter, and again, it has the lights on, is just, scooting along. And as you can see, the distance is closing. Here they are right here. And as the plane's coming into runway, I think it was runway 33, I had clearance to landing. And here's the plane again. And here's the helicopter. And the helicopter flew, it looks like, right into the plane. And there's an explosion. And both the plane and the helicopter fell in the Potomac River. And sadly, there does not look to be any survivors. And the helicopter looks like originated from Langley. That's where the CIA is. So there was a lot of conspiracy theories. But it looks like it was just a typical screw up. And we've had a lot of near misses recently. But now this was not a near miss. Sadly, it actually was a collision. And Trump said something right away on this. Let me just show you here. And this was on his Truth Social platform, President Donald J. Trump. The airplane was on a perfect and routine line of approach to the airport. Yeah, it looks like initially, we don't know until the investigation, but it was the military helicopter's fault. The airline was doing what it was supposed to do. The helicopter was going straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. It is a clear night. The lights on the planes were blazing. Why didn't the helicopter go up or down or turn? Why didn't the control tower tell a helicopter what to do instead of asking if they saw the plane? This is a bad situation that looks like it should have been prevented. Not good. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going out on the limb there. It definitely doesn't look like a mechanical error. It looks like definitely a human error. And I'm sure they'll do an investigation and we'll get more insight to what really happened. But to me, and to a lot of people, it looks like it was the helicopter crew that was at fault. Um, Supposedly it was on a training mission, so you have to ask for the people in the helicopter. Was the helicopter pilot and the crew members, were they properly trained? Why were they flying there in a busy airport? What happened? Modern planes, they have a lot of detection on them, gear that, well, the computer will automatically kind of warn you on planes now if they're getting too close to another plane, and it will tell you to pull up or go down. You might have this technology in your car. A lot of newer cars, it's a really nice feature. If you get too close to another car, it flashes a light, and in some cases, it may even do a braking assist for you. And planes have the similar technology. And so I don't know about the military planes, but I would think a military plane, when they're not when they're flying a combat mission, I understand they may turn all the electronics off, turn the lights off. But this is over Washington, D.C. They should be running the same safety protocols. So it doesn't look good, and it'll be interesting to see what the issue is. And let's just take a look at some more of the response here that we got.
Don't read into that we had how many hours the pilots on a military aircraft had, and you had another question for me that was...
Last night the president had said that this could be prevented, and also that air traffic control, questioning why they may not have communicated with the helicopter telling them what to do.
So we are going to wait for all the information to come in from this vantage point, but to back up what the president said, what I've seen so far, do I think this was preventable? Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, I think it was obviously preventable. We land planes all the time there. It's a very busy airport. And there's supposed to be safety procedures and processes in place to prevent something like this from happening. The planes shouldn't run into each other. They run on specific flight patterns. And the question is, I don't think, it doesn't look like there was some catastrophic mechanical failure, but who knows? Maybe they'll find out. But I don't think the helicopter radioed in like, oh my God, I've lost control of the helicopter. We can't control it. I don't think that happened. It was traveling, it looks like okay. And the plane, it didn't have looks like any issues. So they just ran into each other. And when that happens, you have to ask yourself, number one, sorry, I get all these scam calls. You have to ask yourself, is it a air traffic controller error? Because they're supposed to make sure that doesn't happen. Everyone's on the right path. Or did they do their job and either the American Airlines pilot ignored the instructions or the helicopter pilot ignored the instructions? And I think that's what we'll definitely have to look at. And a couple of I guess a couple of Russians were actually killed on the plane. And it was sad. Here we go. RIP, Russian world figure skating champions, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name, were among the passengers of the doomed American Airlines crash in D.C., and here they are. So, they were probably working with the United States, figure skating team for some reason. And it looks like they were killed in the crash. So sad to see that has happened. And one of the things that we always, when this comes up, when you have these disasters, and I wrote about today in Substack, was this DEI related? And it may not be. Okay, so I'm just giving that clarification. Before we had DEI mandates, you still had human failure, right? So I'm not trying to say that when it was just white men running, the air traffic controllers were white men and the pilots were white men. In the past, there were never accidents. There were, of course there were. Humans are fallible, that happens. But the question is, do things break down when you hire people when they're not qualified, but you hire them because you think diversity is our strength? And so you ignore hiring better people and you get less qualified people. Now, you would think there would be there should always be a lot fewer accidents now than there was in the past because of technology. Technology, like I used an example of your car can help detect other cars and avoid a wreck. And planes have the same technology. But still, if you have weak humans that are not competent, that are there because of their race or their sex or their sexual perversion, you have to ask, did that contribute to the situation? And that's not just some weird conspiracy theory. I think this is a very real concern, especially when it comes to air traffic controllers here. And this was the Washington Times article from a while ago about how the FAA has turned away qualified air traffic controllers based solely on race. So the government agencies, including the FAA, they had a push for diversity, which means bringing in fewer white men. So they wanted more women, they wanted more minorities, and maybe sexual perversions, like if you're gay or trans, they would try to get you in too. And when you do that over getting the most qualified people, you will eventually have problems. And air traffic control's been plagued with problems with lots of near misses. And sadly, last night was not a near miss, it was a hit. But the question is this contributing to the problem? In this case, we don't know. And I'm not saying that was the problem, but that's always going to be in the backs of people's minds is, did we have qualified people in these positions, or were they there simply to fill a quota because, we need diversity in our environment? So we will see as they do the investigation. But this is, even if it wasn't diversity related, this shows the problems when you hire not the best people available for the job. There's always going to be in the back of your mind was that an issue? And it's also an issue, and is true. You could be a qualified, let's say, black doctor or female doctor, but a lot of people are thinking, well, did you really get there because you're qualified, or did you get there because of your race? And most people like me, I'd rather go to a white male doctor because there's so few of them now because they're trying to purge them. The ones that are there, they've earned it. But with a black female, does she really earned it? Or did they push her through medical school? And was there a lot of fraud? So that looks good for the numbers. And we need to end that practice. And I know Trump is trying to do that. And that's a good thing. The problem is going to be in the future, though, when you're going to have disparities. You're not going to have an even representation of people, because I believe people are different genetically and not everyone's the same. I think people are okay with understanding, even the left, that individuals may be different. So let's say you just have white people. We're just studying white people. You have some white people are smart and some that are dumb, and also, some tall, some short. But when you look at group differences, they get really upset and their brain shuts off, thinking that there may be racial differences between whites and blacks and Asians and so forth. I don't know why that should bother us. We instinctively understand that there's differences in various subgroups like dogs. We don't consider German Shepherds to be the same as poodles, and we don't have a mental breakdown. But with humans, we have that mental breakdown that all races are exactly the same, or race isn't even real, or whatever nonsense they're trying to peddle, but it is real. So that is always going to be the problem. In certain positions, if you just get the most qualified people, you're probably not going to get, for example, a lot of blacks. And then you're going to have an issue of why is that? And the left will say, well, that's an example of white supremacy. So we need these affirmative action or DEE to combat white supremacy. And the mainstream Republicans will say, oh, no, it's because of a bad culture. It's because of Democrats run the schools and the teachers union. These black kids had good teachers, they would be just as good as white. And then they invariably they pull out an example like Thomas Sowell or Clarence Thomas as an example, as if the one-offs somehow prove something. They don't. They really don't. I could find probably a poodle that runs faster than some greyhound. Maybe the greyhound is lame or something, but that doesn't prove anything. That's just a one-off. And so that is going to be the issue that is going to be hard to grapple with the mainstream. The idea and the acceptance that no equality or ethnic or racial equality, while you can be equal under the law, and you could say we're all equal under God's eyes, but physically we're not equal, or mentally we're not equal, or emotionally we're not equal. There's differences. And until we accept those differences, we're always going to have that fundamental problem in this whole promoting people or hiring people based on race, and it's just not race, it's also sex. For example, men that tend to make better police officers than women because men tend to be stronger than women and they can deal with issues better than women in that example. Now you can do a one-off, say, oh, I know a woman that's stronger than a man or something like that. Well, that's nice, but that's not the norm. And if we have this idea, 50% of the police force should be women, well, it's going to be a disaster because the women really can't do the job properly. Same with firemen. When you put women in, they can't carry people out. They can't do their job because they don't have the upper body strength in general. And we could say that's not fair, that's sexist, but that's reality. And you could go down the line, and it's just not physically, it's emotionally how men react. They tend to react better to a crisis better than women. Women tend to panic easier. And again, there's biological reasons for this. But we're not allowed to acknowledge these reasons because that's either racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever. But it's still true. It's still reality. And that's fundamentally a problem here. All right. Now we still have a lot of good stuff happening though, and I'm going to go through that. And let me just see here. Just want to make sure I'm all caught up on everything. If you have super chats or questions, just send them in, and let's take a look at this. I think this is really good, how Trump is really going after a lot of these policies. And this is the Department of Defense. Intelligence, and this guy is all upset about it. Intelligence officials are starting to leak to me now too. Here's a memo that Defense Intelligence Agency personnel received instructing them to suspend observances, including Holocaust Remembrance Day. Oh no! MLK Day and Juneteenth. Yeah, and there's all these things they're getting rid of. Women's Equality Day, all these identity politics. And yeah, we don't really need this. I mean, look at all the stuff they had. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. I don't really care about that. Black history. This is all woke identity politics. Asian American pride. And if you want to do all these woke identity politics, and let's have a white pride holiday, right? No, they want to do that. That'd be racist. So they're getting rid of all this nonsense, and I think it's high time. Because the reason for this, because the Holocaust Remembrance Day, you have to remember the word Holocaust wasn't even coined really until 1978. I have a yearbook and encyclopedia from 1974. I kept it. It's in the H's. If you look under Holocaust, there's no mention of it. And it didn't really, the word existed, but it meant a burnt offering. So the whole story has kind of melded over the years after World War II. But the whole point of Holocaust Remembrance Day is that Jewish people should get special privileges. They have a right to homeland, but evil Germans or even any white people, they're not allowed to have their homelands. That's the purpose of that. And all these other racial holidays are the same thing, like Martin Luther King Jr. Day And Juneteenth, which is a made-up day, means blacks should get special privileges. And they do the same for women and Hispanics and you name it, Indians. So this is all going in the garbage, and I think that is a good thing. Because diversity isn't a strength, it's a weakness. And it's amazing because I've always said that. And I was, oh, you're a right-wing extremist for saying that. How dare you say that? And now here's the Secretary of Defense. Take a look at this. This is really good to see here.
What's happening with DEI? How's that going at the Defense Department?
Well, DEI is not going well at the Defense Department because it's dead. We will, as the president said in his inaugural, we will be merit-based and colorblind, and that is the case at the Defense Department. DEI is going to be ripped out root and branch because we want everyone treated equally with high standards and held accountable with warfighting, lethality, and readiness front and center. We don't have time for emphasizing differences. Jesse, one of the dumbest phrases in military history is our diversity is our strength. Our diversity is not our strength. Our unity and our shared purpose is our strength. And the Pentagon is excited to get back to that core mission. It's happening rapidly. The services are responding, and those that don't want to respond can work somewhere else. So diversity, equity, inclusion will not be a part of the Defense Department, not a minute long.
So this is good. This is really amazing because what he's saying here is basically stuff I've been saying for years that was deemed extremely radical and, oh, white supremacists and all this. But diversity isn't a strength. It's never been a strength in history. Diversity just creates conflict, common sense. And we've known that. You look at the former Yugoslavia. You have Muslims and Christians and different ethnic groups. It had to be kept together. The only reason it was kept together is they had Tito, a strong man, a dictator, and a police state to keep it all together. What binds us is a shared blood, heritage, language, religion, customs. And it doesn't mean it has to be absolute pure, but you have to have common things that bind you. The idea that if you have a black on a team, a Mexican, and a homosexual, and a blue-haired feminist, somehow that adds more value to a team than, let's say, all white men. Well, this is not true. Why is it true? Well, because we're a global environment, we need to emphasize other cultures. Well, when this country was 90% white, the world wasn't, but we exported things to the whole world. It wasn't a problem. So the whole premise that just because you have people of different races and different genders and different sexual perversions, somehow that creates strength is false. In fact, as P said, and I've said this for years, it's the opposite. It creates conflict. It creates, it pulls you apart. And if you want to have a cohesive force, you need to emphasize everything that brings you together, binds you together. And people used to understand this. In organizations years ago, forget about racial, even religious. It was like, okay, we're at work. Let's don't get into religious arguments. We're just focused on our work. Let's bind together what's important instead of dividing over all these issues. And DEI is a way to try to divide people and to say that your race or your identity is the most important thing. And again, they do that because, as Kamala said, and the leftists, and this is important to understand their language. When they say equity, they don't mean equality. Equality, the traditional way is, okay, we're going to be colorblind. We're going to just hire the best people for the job. We don't care about your race or your background. That's equality. But the left said, no, that doesn't work because that doesn't end with this equal outcomes. Because if you just do it based on merit, certain groups are going to be underrepresented. So if let's say NASA just hired the top people, the smartest people, you're not going to have many blacks necessarily. And again, the left will say the reason you don't see as many blacks is somehow the tests are biased. They've been victims because their great-great-great-granddaddy was a slave, so that still legacy of slavery keeps them down or whatever. But they really can't explain how Asians came over and jumped to the top right away. So it's this whole thing that people don't want to deal with biological reality. And so that creates the issue there. Until as a society, we're comfortable with saying there are biological differences and we shouldn't expect equal outcomes, and we're okay with that, there's always going to be that tension there. All right, there's always going to be that tension there. And so, like, if you, for example, have a department of NASA, let's say it's all white guys and Asian guys, and there's basically three different ways that this can be looked at. Liberals would say, well, we know everyone is all races and sexes, genders are exactly equal. So it has to be due to white supremacy that's just making it all white men or Asian men. And then you have the MAGA types again will say, well, we agree that everyone is inherently equal, but it's the Dems are controlling the school system and that's hurting the minorities. That's why. But then you have the third option is, well, no, there's biological differences in sexual differences. We shouldn't expect the same outcomes. And I believe the third one is the truth. I've looked at this a long time. I think the science backs it up. I think just common sense, if you observe it, backs it up. So that is a problem because that is considered an evil racist position. And some countries like England, you'll probably be thrown in jail for thinking that. But it's still true. You can make it illegal, but it is still true. So we will have to see. But it's really good to see the Secretary of Defense saying something that I was saying for years. And now this is just considered common sense. So this is good news for that. Hey, I got a rant from Rojas. Is Trump correct here, Rams? Hey, Rojas, thank you so much. It's good to see you. I haven't seen this, so we'll watch this together. Thanks to Rojas. And again, you can send in your rants or super chats, and we'll take this.
You weren't today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. We then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Trump blamed diversity. Maybe he knows details of the people involved, and that's going to be interesting to see. It definitely could be a diversity issue where unqualified people were in the positions and they were there because of, again, their race or whatever. And we saw this the whole time. I think when historians look back at this time, hopefully if our society exists, they will see we went through a really crazy period about the year, I don't know when it really started. It kind of started getting weird in 2016. Really, the last term of Obama, it accelerated the first term under Trump with all the hysteria, the Russian hoax, Antifa burning cities to the ground, BLM murdering people, and then COVID, and everyone they lost their minds. And they all thought for sure they're going to die. It was just a really crazy situation. And then George Floyd, that thug that was killed. And then the push of men in dresses. And then if we don't say that they're women because they're wearing a dress, we're a hater. It was really crazy. And the same people now that are against Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination, or against his being confirmed to the Department of Health, they were literally okay with this guy. And let's never forget this, right? Here was a guy in charge of our health. He's a Jewish man And here he is.
Hello, I'm Admiral Rachel Levine. This Black History Month, I'm pleased to partner with OMH in advancing better health through better understanding for Black communities. Climate change is having a disproportionate effect on.
So this is like a perfect storm of wokeness. You have a Jewish guy, right? And he's wearing a dress here, and he calls himself now Rachel. And he's lecturing us about blacks and climate change.
On the physical and mental health of Black communities. Black Americans are more likely than white Americans to live in areas and housing that increase their susceptibility to climate-related health issues. And 65% of Black Americans report feeling anxious about climate change's impact. Through our Office of Climate Change and Health Equity and the Office
Notice they say equity, not equality.
of Environmental Justice, we're working with providers and
Environmental justice are these extremists that don't really care about the environment. They just hate people, specifically white people.
community leaders to identify innovative approaches that empower communities to address the health consequences linked to climate change. Visit hhs.gov for more information and tune in next Thursday to hear from another HHS leader on how you can contribute to advancing better health for Black communities.
So this is like a perfect storm of how crazy everything got. Just outrageous. I mean, this guy he should have been arrested. But this is, so you have climate change, you have anti-white, the poor Black people are being kept down because of evil white man is changing the climate. And it's really crazed if you think about it. So the same people that thought this dude is fine have a problem with RFK Jr. This is how crazy, and that zero Democrats voted against that guy. And it is crazy. All right. A couple of other things I want to get to here. Trump put a freeze on all federal spending, including foreign spending, including Ukraine, until they can figure out what the hell's going on. Because there's a lot of abuse and waste in the system. Lots. And so it wasn't ending it. It was just a blanket freeze on everything. And then there's a rumor that, oh no, Trump had to walk that back. He had to undo the freeze. But that was fake news. And his press secretary clarified that, because I read online that he walked that back up. There is not a recession of the federal funding freeze. There is simply a rescission of the OMB memo. Why? To end any confusion created by the court's injunction. The president's executive order on federal funding remains full and enforced in effect and will be rigorously implemented. And what this is what was excluded in this freeze was Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and which I'm fine with in the sense that Social Security is not an entitlement program. It was a forced savings program. People had to put, that's your money that you put in there. So they don't have a right to freeze that. But that was what they were saying. And here Trump dealt with this a little bit here. And we'll hear his words on this.
We did very well in 2020, but we did really well just recently. And I'm restating right now to correct any confusion that the media has purposely and somehow, for whatever reason, created Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid have not been affected by any action we're taking in any way, shape, or form. We are merely looking at parts of the big bureaucracy where there has been tremendous waste and fraud.
So Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security are not frozen. And the fake news media was running that it was frozen. That was part of the confusion.
Abuse. In that process, we identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs. How about that? We stopped an attempt to make an illicit payment for illegal alien resettlement.
So the condom thing, whatever the number is, some people disputed that number, but why are they can buy their own condoms. This should not be people that are working in Arkansas, the United States, should not have part of their money to go to pay for condoms to Gaza. I think we don't have the money for this bullshit, and that's just common sense.
We canceled $181 million in DEI training contracts. This is just for the training of people.
Yeah, a lot of people got rich, companies that fashion themselves as DEI diversity consultants is bullshit. But they would start these private firms, and the government would contract with these firms to give training. And the training consisted of, telling white guys how evil they are and trying to push all this stuff.
People in DEI, which has been terminated and completely terminated, and we paused $1.7 billion in unauthorized payments to foreign organizations, including stopping more than $40 million that was on its way out the door to the very corrupt World Health Organization.
In a lot of these foreign organizations, this is actually key. Trump is cutting off a lot of the money that is going to NGOs. They work with the government, and in many cases they get your tax money, including so-called like Catholic charities that really aren't Catholic, and a lot of people running the Catholic charities are not Christian at all, let's just say that. And they're getting government money to actually harm the nation and to break our laws. And that's just one example, but there's many of them. And Trump is cutting off funding to these organizations. And not only that, through immigration, these NGOs, they're used to foment trouble overseas. When I used to live in Hungary before the election, there would be American NGOs, partially taxpayer funded, partially Soros, that would come in and try to disrupt the elections and do their color revolutions. And Trump is cutting off all the money to that.
Which has not done its job and not done it properly. We also... We also blocked $45 million for diversity scholarships in Burma. 45, that's a lot of money for
Diversity scholarships in Burma.
Diversity scholarships in Burma.
So there is a lot of waste that's happened. So Trump, they have paused federal spending. And again, it's not all. It doesn't include Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. So the media, they've been trying to scare old people. Oh, they're cutting your Social Security. That's not happening. So luckily, Trump and his team has been right on that to correct that. So that was definitely good news. All right, let me just see here. Okay, let's see here. And as someone said here, this was a good post on X, and I agree with this. And thank you guys for being with the show. We do this every Monday through Friday. On Fridays, we do it at 8 p.m. So tomorrow night would be the Ramsey Paul Show, but be sure to like and subscribe both on YouTube and Rumble, and follow me on X at Ramsey Paul. Some lady named Tish. Trump is shutting down Christian ministries. Ministries I supported may have to close their doors. I've never seen anything like this. What I would argue as this guy said, an entity that cannot survive absent federal funding isn't a ministry at all. It's a federal agency. That's true. So if a so-called Christian agency is getting federal money, that the government shouldn't be involved in this. In these agencies, they just use the Christian tag, but they're not really Christian for the most part. They're, pro-abortion, pro-sodomy, pro-destroying our borders. They're just wearing this skin suit of Christianity. And I had no idea that they were on the government's teat, and they demand your tax money to help destroy your lives. And thankfully, they are being shut down. So good news for Trump on that. I'd like to see this. And we're going to get a lot of changes, and I hope Trump goes hard and keeps the momentum. Every day's been pretty good, and we need to end stuff like this. Let me show you a photo. Any school caught doing this will be stripped of their funding. This madness ends now. Yeah, look at these little kids. It's really sad. They're waving a homosexual flag. This used to be something like in the 70s. You would just see in like the Castro district of San Francisco, in some fetish bar. And now they're pushing sodomy on little children like this and so-called sex changes and all that. Evil, evil. Schools should be to teach kids how to read, write, arithmetic. God knows they're not doing a very good job of it right now. And we need to have a focus on children on the basic education, not to do this woke propaganda, and they should not be doing this. Not only this should be illegal, but any teacher that authorizes should be disbarred from the teaching profession permanently. Outrageous. It'd be like if a teacher just had the children draw swastikas and white power signs. I don't think that'd go over very well. They have no business promoting that homosexuality like they're doing. And hopefully that will end here soon. Let's see here. And some of the people, they're not going quietly into the night though. And here's an example of this here. Yeah, I can't even stand the homosexual flag. Whenever I see it, I just want to throw up. And when I see it, I just can't stand it. Breaking: U.S. Inspector General Phyllis Fong, I don't know what she's doing in America, first of place, was reportedly escorted out of her office by security after she refused to leave after President Trump fired her. No, I'm not leaving. You can't get me out of here. I'm like, yes, we can, bitch. Hopefully they kicked her in the ass. I think we should deport her out of the country. I don't know, is she from China? But she did not want to leave her office, but they forced her out. So some people aren't walking quietly into the night. They're like, oh no, I'll have to get a real job now. I just can't really stand this. And it is sort of the battle for our soul. And I love this meme here. If you guys saw this, take a look at this here. The future of Western civilization rests upon who wins the epic battle between the hysterical, psychotic cat ladies versus the alpha chats. Elizabeth Warren, she's this elderly woman in her 70s that was screeching, putting on her clown act at the hearings. And RFK Jr. is like, oh God. And then here's this lady having a meltdown with JD Vance. What? You're going to deport people? And here's Pete, and this lady's having a meltdown, and Trump with Kamala. Yeah, I think Americans, we have had enough of these hysterical cat ladies from HR. They annoy us. We don't want to see them. We definitely don't want to hear from them. And there has been definitely, as the cool kids say, a vibe shift. And people don't want to hear these obnoxious old women screaming at us. All right, let's see here. Speaking of RFK, they had a little update on this, and his confirmation hearing, it's mostly theater. These people go through everything. And let's listen to this.
Instead of debating meaningful ways to improve Americans' health care, now the committee is being forced to relitigate settled science about vaccines and whether or not the federal government should help Americans get affordable health care. I know where Democrats on this finance committee stand when it comes to an agenda to lower costs and improve care. I must say, I cannot say the same about the nominee sitting in front of me.
So this guy brought up a good point. They use the term settled science, and you see this a lot. If you ever see those cringe signs in front of woke people's houses, in this house we believe, it's really interesting. It's sort of like the Nicene Creed in Christianity. In fact, that's kind of where they get it from. They don't know it. They hate Christians of God, but they're really trying to copy that. And again, they don't understand that. So they have a catechism of their beliefs, their faith. And one of the things in this house, we believe in science. This was always so cringy during COVID. It's like, well, science is something you don't believe in. Science is a methodology that encourages questions and reevaluation. There's never settled science. I mean, there's things we're pretty confident on, force equals mass times acceleration, but pretty, we do experiments and that tends to happen. But, with quantum mechanics, who knows? Maybe that's not always the same true. And that's okay. You get into more, science is always, it's a methodology. It's how you determine reality. And it really came from the white man and the way of looking at things. Instead of everything being mystical, these people, and most of these scientists were Christians, believe God made the universe in a rational way that we could figure out. And we could actually do experimentations, do a hypothesis to see if it works out. That's all science is. It's not a blind belief in something. So there is no settled science. You always need to be able to look at things. And there was always that issue during COVID. They always pulled out the settled science. Like Joe Biden, remember, he pulled out the science. Hey, if you're, is settled. If you get the vaccine, you're not going to get COVID. Remember that? You get a strike on YouTube if you challenge that statement. And then Joe Biden, after he got the vaccine, he got COVID, as did millions of others. Well, I don't know. I'm not trying to be an expert, but to me, it seems like that science wasn't exactly settled, right? If you make a claim and then in real life data shows millions of times that your claim is false, which is wrong, real life or your claim? I would think it's the claim. And that is, I think, part of the problem. And so that was crazy. Hey, a generous donation from Donald Joy. Thank you, Donald. Trump just did a live pressure and has aggressively blamed DEI at the FAA for the aviation disaster. He didn't back down under the reporter's questions. Well, sadly, that was initially, I don't know about you guys, when this first happened, my thought was it's DEI related. You have controllers that weren't qualified, but they were there because of racial reasons or because they're a woman. And just so you guys understand, a lot of people say, oh, when you mean DEI, you believe no blacks or women should have jobs. And it's like, no, I'm saying that everyone, I support for federal positions, my position would be equality, meaning we take the best people for the jobs, who scores the highest on the test. We don't care what sort of sexual practice you do, or if you're male or female, if you're black or Asian or whatever, you're top, you're the best. That's equality. That's my position. And then if blacks get in the position because they show they're qualified, well, great, right? I have no problem with that, or women too. But if you can't make the qualifications, there's a problem. It's sort of like firemen. If you can't carry a body because you don't have the upper body strength, and because people in house fires sometimes smokes, usually you die not because of the flames, but because of smoke. So you pass out, the fireman comes in with a mask, they need to lift you up and carry you out. And women usually can't do that. And we saw that woman in the head fire chief, one of the lesbians, I forget, they had all these lesbians named Kristen in LA. This one, I think she was black, some sort of race, was saying, well, that's your problem. You shouldn't have got yourself in that position anyway. Yeah, no, we need to get away from that. And so hopefully this will be a wake-up call. And if Trump is saying that it's a DEI at the FAA, that means he's got some information probably already of what actually happened. Whenever something like this happens, it's kind of like a shooting. You always want to know the race and sex and everything, what's happening. And so there's some clues there. But yeah, we do need to get away from that. So good for Trump coming against that. I think if it is proved to be DEI, it's something I wrote about. We really need to relook at the past 10, 20 years of people that got the positions. Are they really qualified? It's like, sorry, dude, you got this position, but we got to review it because a lot of unqualified people were put in positions because of diversity. And it's a matter of life and death in some situation. If you were on an Apache helicopter, where would you fly? That's a good question, Agent 009. You know, I've never been on a helicopter. I mean, the helicopters always seem sort of dangerous to me anyway. Where would I fly in the helicopter? I don't know. They have I think it'd be cool to go over New York City, see the skyline, or they have those helicopter flights. That'd be kind of fun. Or the Grand Canyon. That'd be kind of fun. So, someday maybe I'll do a helicopter flight. I've never been on a helicopter. All right. I've been on small planes when I was a kid. I was on a plane that did a loop-de-loop. I had a relative. He had a small plane. We did that. That was a lot of fun. All right. Let's see here. All right. We got another confirmation happening here with the new FBI chief here. And here we go. Let's listen to this guy. This guy, the FBI's been in a mess too. The FBI, its mission has changed. It's become the political secret police. It wasn't meant to be that. And Kash Patel at the confirmation hearing, and he is very insistent on fixing the FBI. Let's listen.
I am standing here because of the American dream. I am not standing here because of the color of my skin.
See, so this is a guy who's obviously Indian, but he's saying, I'm not here because I'm Indian. I'm here because I can do the job. This is the opposite of DEI. DEI means you're there because of your race or your sex or your, again, sexual perversion.
I'm standing here because I earned my right on this stage, and you earned your right to be here with me. And I promise you this, with every fiber of my being, that our law enforcement, that our teachers, that our first responders, that our veterans, that our men and women in uniform who dare to serve this country and put themselves below the rest of our needs will be reprioritized to the top of the heap because they are standing on that wall, and we will not let that light go dark on them.
So he's got his confirmation hearing now, and there's obviously some controversy about it because he wants to fix a lot of the FBI, because FBI unfortunately became very woke too. It became the political police. Instead of protecting Americans, they were looking to arrest Americans because of their political points of view. Like if you were a parents, remember when the whole critical race theory came out, it was shown in schools, where in the schools, your children your little boys and girls would be taught in school that they should be ashamed of themselves because of their race. And white people are evil, and we must learn to work. You need to be an ally to eliminate whiteness, which is a genocidal statement, right? Could you imagine a course that, oh, we need to eliminate Jewishness and tell little Jewish kids they got to participate in that? Well, when parents protested that at a school board, the Biden regime sent the FBI agents to try to hassle people, go to their homes and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. And let's see here. We have another moment from him. I think he's got his confirmation hearing today. So let's take a look at this here.
And anyone that thinks in the collective, all of those statements are taken out of grotesque context. And anyone that thinks my 16 years of service isn't exemplary on how I would proceed if confirmed as FBI is intentionally putting false information into the public ether and creating more public discourse. The only thing that will matter if I'm confirmed as a director of the FBI is a de-weaponized, depoliticized system of law enforcement completely devoted to rigorous obedience of the Constitution and a singular standard of justice.
Yeah, I hope he can depoliticize the FBI. The FBI, they got off track. Originally, they were involved with like kidnappings and bank robberies because banks were federal institutions and crimes that cross state lines. I don't even know if we need an FBI, really. The FBI has had a long history of getting involved with politics, even back in the 60s and 70s, and not just right-wing organizations. They also would get in left-wing groups and create left-wing organizations and plan evidence and do a lot of dirty tricks. And that came out in the Church Commission in the 1970s. They had big hearings and they did their best to try to clean up the FBI and put more controls on them. Because the FBI, they're to enforce the laws, they're not supposed to intimidate people whose speech or politics they don't like. That's not the job of the FBI. So if you come out and you say that, hey, I'm opposed to DEI or I'm opposed to critical race theory, it's not the FBI job to show up at your house and try to intimidate you. That's not their job. Their job is to enforce the laws. And sadly, instead of dealing with real terrorists we've had with Islamic terrorists and a lot of these Venezuelan gangs and so forth, they've been trying to entrap white nationalists. That's been their number one priority. It's that these groups don't really exist. So they've been going out trying to get groups to do this sort of thing. And it's been a misallocation of resources. And there's so many cases, like during COVID, they decided people that were anti the COVID vax, they needed to be targeted. So the FBI formed a fake group to try to supposedly kidnap the governor of Michigan. They recruited some hapless people in this group so they could bust them. That's not the role of the FBI. Too much time now, the FBI is involved with, they literally set up their own groups and then try to get people in the group. So they're trying to set up terror plots that would not exist except for the FBI. They set these things in motion. And they get involved with confidential informants like we saw on January 6th. We know now that they were FBI informants at January 6th. And I have suspicions there's still FBI informants out there in our politics trying to poison the well. And that's not the business of the FBI. We don't need that. That's not their business. And that needs to be cleaned out. They need to follow the Constitution and get back to that standard. I mean, at one point, the FBI had a really good reputation. You know, they hunt down serial killers, stuff like that. Their job shouldn't be to try to politically hassle people. And that is the situation here. All right. And thank you, though, for the super chat. I really do appreciate that. I don't know, where would you guys take a helicopter flight if you could do it? I'll have to ask Sasha if she would take a helicopter. I'm not sure. Sasha was a little scared of flying, but she's done better with me. We do pretty good. I flew so much for my work. I got over my fear of flying. It doesn't bother me at all. All right. Breaking. President Trump to sign an executive order to deport pro-Hamas students on visas that break the law. And Patrick Casey actually had a good text on this. And if you actually read the executive order, it's not as objectionable as a lot of people would think it is. And let me, I agree with Patrick Casey here. Let me just bring this up here. I understand why people are wary of stuff like this. You don't have to be a Hamas supporter to believe America should have the right to criticize other countries, including Israel. I agree with that too. So number one, this has nothing to do with American citizens. You can criticize Israel, and you should be able to criticize Israel. And I'm a big critic of the Israeli lobby. They have way too much control over many of our politicians. I've said that repeatedly. Tom Cotton, my senator from Arkansas, I say my senator, he doesn't really represent Arkansas, though. He's totally bought out by the Israeli lobby. I consider him a foreign agent at this point. We need to eliminate that. Foreign countries should not be funding our politicians. And they do it through a loophole with AIPAC, but that's how it's done. But this EO doesn't do this. The Section 2 of this executive order it refers to unlawful anti-Semitic harassment and violence. In other words, it applies to illegal activity, not free speech. And I get this, but here's my take. If you're in another country, like when I went to Hungary, I did not get involved with Hungarian politics. It's not my business. And I do not want, I don't even know why they should be in our country in the first place, these so-called students, but I don't want Palestinian students in my country committing crimes. They should be deported if they do that. And so I don't really have that much of a problem with that. I do have a problem with these like anti-BDS laws where they say that you can't boycott Israel and get a federal job. That's just outrageous, especially for American citizens. But there's a distinction between American citizens and others. Others, that they don't get the constitutional protections. Constitutional protections, freedom of speech, religion, and so forth, are for American citizens. Like illegal aliens, they don't get that. They need to go back to their homelands. And students that come over here that are foreigners, they don't get those protections necessarily. Now, I wouldn't necessarily want to ban them from having a protest against Israel, but they don't have a right to be violent or break their laws or like take over the student union or something like that. So we'll have to see how that goes, but I'm not necessarily too much against it the way it's written. And I know a lot of our people, anything that could be seen as pro-Jewish, they're, oh no, he's controlled. And it's a difficult position. Z-Man's talked about this too. Is like, it seems like we have this weird, this big divide, right? It's like a false dichotomy. Either you're just in love with the Jewish people in Israel and they're God's special people. We got to send them all our military aid and we got to cheer them when they genocide people. Or everything you got to blame on the Jews, right? So if it rains, it's because of a conspiracy. I mean, and then people go insane in that realm. And I think that realm is equally as bad. And you got a lot of people on that side. They're like, oh, we got to support radical Islam now because they're against Israel and Jews. I'm like, no, I don't want that in there. And we've seen that a little bit of that division when you just become a one subject guy. It prevents you from being able to really speak to this people, I think, on a rational basis. And I don't think most Americans want to see Muslims running amok on our campuses, committing crimes. And I don't want to see that either for whatever reason. Now, does that mean I think people should be able to protest Israel? Definitely. I'm not, just so you guys know my position, I'm not necessarily against Israel. They have their ethno-state. And I don't think we should be funding Israel. I don't think we should allow them to buy our politicians. That's just outrageous. We need to treat Israel like we treat Iceland. It should be similar. So I'm a big critic of a lot of what they've done. And a lot of the groups, the Jewish groups, like the Catholic Charities, have been involved with our bringing in invaders into our countries. We need to stop them. But this whole idea that because of that, we have to allow Islamic extremists in our country, I disagree with that notion. So, yeah, that was that. All right. And speaking of which, there's been a... so you had Pete on the Secretary of Defense sound like RAMZPAUL saying diversity is not the strength, right? And now you have Matt Walsh, who worked for the Daily Wire. I think he does. I don't know if he still will, but I've said publicly like 100 times that I want to end all foreign aid to all countries, including Israel. It was so funny. This is the change that has happened. The vibe shift, because I remember I did a video about this. I think it was 2014 or 15. Ron Paul wanted to end all foreign aid, and someone, Hershowitz or one of those guys, they called Ron Paul a vicious anti-Semite because he wanted to end all aid to all countries, not just Israel. You're a vicious anti-Semite Nazi. It was so crazy. And now you have someone like Matt Walsh that works for a Jewish organization, the Daily Wire, is saying that he wants to end all foreign aid. That is huge. A few years ago, I don't know if he would have said that. And so we're getting to the point where And by the way, this is my position too. We don't have the money to give to other countries. Other countries, they need to learn to stand on their own, including Israel. And if people, they love their heritage, say Jewish Americans or Christian Zionists want to privately raise money, fine. They can raise money for another foreign country. Just don't do it on my dime. And again, it's just not Israel. I don't want my money going to Egypt. I don't want condoms going to Gaza, the Palestinians. I don't want my money going to Ukraine. I think that's a reasonable position, and we're seeing a change in how that works there. So I think that is actually a very good sign of what has happened there. So Matt Walsh has come against aid to Israel. I don't know how Ben Shapiro will think about that, but that is pretty amazing here. All right, let's just see here. There's a lot of good stuff. It's hard to keep up with all the good stuff that's happening. And this is Donald Trump. He put a stop to something. You remember we had all the Venezuelans, gangs took over apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. Just in, Trump announced a new executive order to prepare a 30,000 person illegal immigrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Let's watch this. Here we go.
I'm also signing an executive order to instruct the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to begin preparing the 30,000 person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Most people don't even know about it. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And that's a tough place to get out of. Today's signings bring us one step closer to eradicating the scourge of migrant crime in our communities once and for all. And it was just it's just an unforced error that we even have to be doing this. Now we need Congress to provide full funding for the complete and total restoration of our sovereign borders, as well as financial support to remove record numbers of illegal aliens.
This was an excellent position that Trump did. And by the way, in my weekly roundtable, which I encourage you guys to join on Substack, sign up, subscribe to me on Substack. It helps me, and you could be part of a great discussion. There's a guy that lives in Mexico there currently, a white guy. And I've heard this many times. Mexico actually has a very strict immigration policy. They deport illegals right away. Like people come in from Guatemala, unless you keep going through to America, they deport your ass. Most countries do that. And the idea that if someone is a violent criminal in America, let's say the gang members that took over the complex in Aurora, Colorado, they were pointing AK-47s at innocent people, demanding rent money from them. Those people, they should not be rewarded with a free plane ride back to Venezuela. No, that's bullshit. They should be going their ass in prison. And Guantanamo Bay, that's the perfect place to put them. It's nice and warm there. It's more to their ethnic background. They can live there. We shouldn't, regular illegal aliens, okay, deport to their country of origin. But if you're a criminal, if I committed a crime in Hungary, I don't think Hungary would just give me a free plane ticket back to the United States. You have to pay the price. So 100% support that. That is good. And speaking of Venezuelans, I wanted to show one more thing on this. This is very, very key here. And very good news. Oh, I got a super chat. Bobby Tate, I'm in the UK. God bless you. When Trump got in, again, we all said that it's all talk. He won't do anything. But damn, he's kicking some ass. We need a Trump here. Yeah, I really feel sorry for people in the UK. And I'm hard on the UK and England. And it's not like I don't love you guys, because you guys are my ancestors, right? If you go back far enough, Ramsey is a Scottish name. And my grandmother was named Jones. That's Welsh, so Wales. So I've English. I have a lot of English blood in me. So those are my people. And I hate to see what's happening to that once great nation. Britain really helped civilize the world. It's sad. It's becoming an Islamic state. I would love to see a day that you see in America where we start deportations. You would see that in Britain, where they start rounding up these people like knife attackers and so forth and send them back to Pakistan. And I'm going to go over, but thank you very much for that. God bless you. And let me see if I can, I wanted to show you this on here. Since you sent that in, I'm going to change direction a little bit. I want to see where this is. JD Vance actually talked. Yeah, okay. I'm going to show you guys this. I don't know if you saw JD Vance talking about this, about UK. Let's show you guys this right here.
Talking about, you know, I was talking with a friend recently, and we were talking about, you know, one of the big dangers in the world, of course, is nuclear proliferation, though, of course, the Biden administration doesn't care about it. And I was talking about, you know, what is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran, you know, maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over.
Yeah, and people laugh, but it's not that much of a joke. England lost World War II. They're losing their people. They're losing their homeland. They're being replaced by Islamic immigration. If you object to it in England, you go to jail. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. And so it was good to see a JD Vance say that. Here's a super chat. If hypothetically someone like Nigel Farage won prime minister in the UK, would it still not matter? He could not impose what Trump can here. Well, never say never. Never say never. A lot of people, including myself, thought it would be impossible for someone like Trump to get in, trying to end birthright citizenship, trying to deport people right away, coming down hardcore against DEI, saying we're not doing that bullshit. We're not flying the homosexual flag anymore. But it's happened. So things can happen quickly because people on the right, the advantage we have is we deal with reality and the truth. Whereas the left, they have to try to brainwash you that it's evil to be who you are, your race, and you have a duty to give up your homeland. That's really alien. And they have to require a lot of propaganda in Hollywood, the movies, everything else. And so I would never say never. I think it is possible. And the other thing to keep in mind is the United States, other countries tend to follow us a lot and our example in good ways and bad ways. The whole woke thing kind of started in the United States. And then, that virus went into Canada and Britain. Now, Britain has taken it to a new level. They're like a communist state. But even Canada, they're going down to a third world status because of the carbon tax. And it looks like Justin Trudeau, he's resigning and the conservatives may take over, eliminate that tax. So I think there's been a change, and a lot of Europe could change too. And Elon Musk supporting AfD in Germany and telling them you don't have to be ashamed to be German. And everyone's like, oh, how dare you say that? You have to be ashamed of who you are. People are like, no, fuck you. We're not doing that anymore. And once the whole manipulation no longer works, the game is up on them. And this is the emotional blackmail they're doing no longer works. And here's an example about this. And I'm really happy because I knew they would do this. Cheap emotional blackmail lost at the ballot box. And they have this isn't how you fix America. And they show a little brown girl crying because she's got to go back to her homeland. Oh, look how mean white America is. Oh. Well, first of all, this photo, this was community checked. It didn't happen recently. This was back in 2018. It had nothing to do with the current situation. But even if it does, I don't really care. God bless her. She needs to go back with her family to her homeland. We are not going to destroy our country because these idiots take pictures of little brown kids crying. I don't give a shit about that. They need to go back. And we got to get over this emotional blackmail. And they obviously are targeting women for this, trying to make them sad. But we got to get beyond that. And I think people are getting a little bit beyond that. And that's really heartening to see. We saw this with the, Selena Gomez. She was bawling on camera. She had to delete this. And we're seeing a little bit of this start, but it's not getting a lot of traction. And I'm really optimistic. And here's an example. If ICE takes me, don't forget about me. I will be in El Salvador. You're my best friend, the brother I never have. I cry every night thinking that they will come for me at school. Oh, look at the tears. This is heartbreaking. Well, number one is probably fake. Probably some shit wrote it. But even if it is real, I find this heartwarming. Not heartbreaking, heartwarming. And we need to be ready for this emotional propaganda they're going to do, their little emotional blackmail. And so just be ready. And so far I've been really encouraged because people haven't caved in with it right away. And I predicted this was what would happen. I didn't predict that people would resist it as well as they have. All right, we got another good news thing. The good news keeps coming with the Trump administration. And this is what I was looking at. U.S. withdrawing Venezuelan migrants' temporary protected status. This involves 600,000 people. Because, Central America and South America, they're, kind of banana republics. They always have Viva la Revolucion! And then they overthrow the president for life. It's this way how Latin America works. And because of that, all these poor people, they're leaving Venezuela. We got to give them protected status. So that's how we got. You're wondering, how in the hell did we get Venezuelan gang members taking over apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado? I grew up in Colorado. Aurora's on the east side of Denver. I lived on Lakewood and Littleton on the west side. But how in the hell did that happen? Well, this is how it happened. And Trump is saying, no, they're not getting this temporary protection. They have to go back. So this is potentially another 600,000 people. You got to get your ass back to Venezuela. Good news. Very, very good news. And I think we should be very happy to see that this is going forward. Very good to see this happening here. So just wrap up here. A lot of stuff happening, but most of it's been pretty good news here. I'll give you that. All right. There was also the... This is an act that is more symbolic because they're being deported anyway. But this was and this reporter asked about the spending cuts when they were signing the Laken Riley Act. Laken Riley was a girl that was murdered by an illegal immigrant. And this act basically says if you're a violent criminal and you're illegal, you don't have a right to remain in America. No, if you kill someone in America and you're an illegal immigrant, you should be in the cemetery. That's where you should end up. We shouldn't send your ass home. But you shouldn't even need this act because I guess the Democrats, they not only wanted people illegally coming in, but even if they were killing and hurting people, they wanted them to stay in. And now officially, if you're a violent criminal, you're going to get deported. Well, actually, you should probably go to Guantanamo Bay or you should go to the cemetery. But, we shouldn't even need this act. But we signed it, and that is good. And, it's positive. It's just a shame we even needed that act. That should just be common sense. We don't allow people in. Okay. Let me just see here. I'm gonna go over this video. This was kind of close the show, and this is 2 minutes. I had an opossum in my front yard, and Sasha goes, "Oh no, there's this critter out here," and it did. It gets scared and it pretends to be dead when you see him. And they're around here, and I'm like, it's okay. And then he went on his way. But here we go.
This year, I was just hiking on the trail and I came across this guy. This is an opossum. I saw him walking on the trail and I walked up to it and it got so scared and fainted, it passed out and it played possum. This is an involuntary response by these animals. They don't choose to play possum.
Yeah, and again, I have one in my yard, and they do. They just lay there and they look like that.
They just get so scared that they kind of pass out. He's starting to wake up a little bit. You can see his teeth. They got over 50 teeth. They'll do some damage, but they really won't bite you. I'm not in danger of getting bit, or I'm not really in danger of getting rabies. I know these animals might look dirty or kind of like a rat, but they are actually super clean animals. They groom themselves all day long. They actually eat ticks that go on top of them. So anytime they walk through some brush and they get a tick, they will eat it. They are known.
That is good. I mean, I have ticks where I live. I hate ticks. That's why I always joke about these ethiots that are running around half naked in a field. You don't want to do that in Arkansas in the summer or spring. You'll get ticks all over you.
To eat up to 5,000 ticks a year, helping prevent Lyme disease. They also almost never have rabies. Could they get rabies? Sure, so could humans. But their body temperature is so low internally, it's tough for the rabies virus to survive. So they do not commonly carry it. Another cool thing about them is on their feet, they have opposable thumbs. They also have this super long tail that they use to hang onto trees and help climb. These guys will pretty much eat anything. They will eat anything from fish, bugs, insects, snakes, vegetables, dog food, cat food you leave outside, but you'll see them in your garbage. A lot of times people will think they're a big rat, but they're actually not. They're more closely related to a kangaroo than a rat. They do have the pouch on their belly, which makes them a marsupial. They are the only marsupial here we have in North America, which is pretty cool. These guys are awesome. They use those whiskers to help dig and look for stuff. Look at how calm this guy is. He's just sitting in my hands.
Yeah, that guy's
He's
chill.
not going anywhere. But such amazing creatures. We're going to put them back here in a second. Another cool thing about these guys is they can actually have up to 20 live babies at birth. They almost come out of the birth canal about 14 days after mating. So they have one of the shortest gestation periods of all mammals. When the babies are born, they crawl right into the mother's pouch and they will stay there until they get big enough to crawl out. And they, all right.
Pretty cool. Your facts about possums. I like that because, again, I saw a possum in my yard a few weeks ago. And neat animals. So he went on his way. I kind of helped the possum move along, and he was a nice guy. Let's see here and make sure I got everything. And anyway, guys, it's just as a reminder, tomorrow there is a RAMZPAUL show, but it's in the evening at 8 p.m. Central. So tomorrow's my night show. And I look forward to doing that. It's going to be Friday. Yay! Friday. So I hope you guys have a great week. It's rainy. It rained all last night here. So we're already headed pretty soon into spring. We're done with the super cold weather, hopefully. Anyway, guys, have a great day. And I will see you guys tomorrow night. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.